Hello and welcome to our FaB Finance and Fundings webinar. So massive warm welcome to our panellists. So we've got James Blacklaws. Hi James.
Morning,
Got Jenny Wale.
Hi everyone.
Hi. Got Flo. Hi Flo. Flo. Flo's frozen. Message Flo for me, Gem. And Andrew. Andrew.
Hi.
Okay. So basically, the reason that we wanted to do this particular webinar is because talk about up and down. What with the up and down of what's happened to all of us, and that we're all now working from home, or what we wanted to do was see if we could get some help and advice from the experts in the group on the types of things that our members can do at the moment. I mean, I have fought with lobbying to try and get help, and it's come in lots of different ways, but it really still isn't very clear how to do things. So if I start with James. So James, can you bring us up to date on the business interruption loans, please, and how we get them, please?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the difficult part. Yeah. Thanks, Amanda and Gemma, for inviting me along. For those you don't know, my name is James Blacklaws. My business is AJB Commercial Finance. You should be able to see up there, hopefully.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
I've done that today on Canva, so I hope that works.
Good.
And I've been in the business finance sector for 17 years and running an independent commercial finance brokerage for 5 years. 5 years in June it will be. So I think I've got a reasonable grasp of business finance. So that's a bit about me. This scheme though, which is called catchily called the Corona Business Interruption Loan Scheme, or CBILS for short. You'll find in finance everything's got an abbreviation, and this is CBILS. And the scheme on paper was brought out to enable banks to lend money to businesses where they otherwise wouldn't. So the key features of this are that businesses who are UK based, who turn over up to £45 million, and this is the kind of key thing really, could show that they were a viable business before the coronavirus obviously has impacted on trade, and would continue to be a viable business afterwards, but would require this loan money to actually allow them to continue trading and to be that viable business. So all that looks fantastic, and on paper, again, it looks great. The loan term is up to 6 years, and the government would cover the first 12 months of interest, which is great, and the first 6 months of capital repayments. So effectively, you'd have an interest and capital payment-free loan for 6 months, then cover the interest for another 6 months, before moving on to full payments for a 5-year period. So that all looks brilliant.
We get that then. Sounds great.
So far, so good, yeah. And it's important to keep track of this. I mean, the British Business Bank website is the place to look for this information, because anything on the government site refers to that. And I look at it sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, and it has updated. And the updates can be subtle, but to someone like myself who obviously has to look at the small print, they've been very important. And at first I was very sceptical about this scheme, as a lot of us finance guys are. Then I became quite positive about it earlier this week when some changes came out. And one of the beauties of my job, I suppose, is I get to talk to the guys on the front line. So in the last day or so, and every day really, I'm talking to the guys from RBS NatWest, from Lloyds, from Santander, from Barclays, as well as the other lenders who are administrating this scheme. Because it's not just the high street banks. There are over 40 lenders who have signed up for this. And I know there's several other lenders who are actively trying to get on the scheme, which I'll come to in a minute, if I may. And that's really positive, because as we've found out over the years, if you leave things to the high street banks to do, they normally make a mess of it, which is kind of what's happening. Now, for anyone who's followed any kind of social media or followed this at all on Facebook or LinkedIn, whatever, most people are having real difficulty getting through to their banks at this moment in time. I know someone who emailed their bank this morning, their business bank, that's what Lloyd's was, and they got a rejection email saying that the inbox was full. So I thought that's really helpful, isn't it? And I've heard stories that people waiting 2-3 hours to then get cut off and all that. And I've said to a lot of these people, you can save yourself the time, because as it stands, the majority of businesses won't actually qualify for this particular scheme. Because again, the devil's in the detail. And when you speak to the banks, they're still treating this as a backup scheme to business as usual. So if you are a bank, if you were a client and you wanted to borrow, let's just say 100,000 quid from your bank for your business, you go to the bank, they do a credit assessment on you, they take the various details and the forms, and then they would normally take a form of security. So a form of security may be a charge on your residential property, a second charge behind your mortgage, it may be a charge over the business assets, maybe a charge over a vehicle, whatever it may be. It's known as a secured loan. The issue with that is it takes time, and it also requires the borrower to have that available security. Now, previously, there was a scheme called the Enterprise Finance Guarantee Scheme, or EFG, which allowed banks to lend money to businesses who had a viable proposition. So the banks would want to lend their money in the great scheme of things, but they didn't have security. And this scheme works in a very similar way. But while the banks have still got the security available, they are taking it. So as someone who wants that £150,000 and goes to their bank, if they've got the security in place, the banks are saying, we're not going to look at this scheme. It's business as usual. We can still lend on commercial terms to this business. So we still want to take a charge over their house, which of course at the moment is especially problematic because valuers aren't going into houses to value properties. Solicitors aren't going into work all the time, etc., etc. So as it stands, the scheme with the high street banks has really ground, well, it hasn't even started, to be perfectly honest. It's ground to a halt before it's even started. So all the advice has been to contact your bank as the first point of call for this scheme. And actually, I've yet to hear amongst my entire network around the country any successful cases of deals being accepted at this stage. And we're 2.5 days into this scheme. So I mean, that's a massive proportion of the broker community, and we don't know anyone who's had a deal accepted. But that brings me to the sort of the second point, which is alternative lenders who are also on this scheme, some of which are a lot more flexible, shall we say, with regard to the banks. They have online portals you can apply through, and guys that make applications together very, very quickly. And I hear a lot more positive stuff coming from these guys. Don't get me wrong, it's still an arduous process, but there are potentially avenues we can use this scheme to help clients. So it's still early days, and the problem is the banks are administrating a scheme which looks like it's going to take a long time to be up and running, but it's a problem which needs to be solved now. And I don't think the scheme as it is currently positioned is fit for purpose. Hopefully that will change over the next few days. But my concern is that it's going to be too late. And a lot of people, I know a lot of businesses are calling me, asking me for advice in this, and they're sitting and waiting, sitting on their hands, waiting effectively for their bank to save them or for the government to save them with regard to this, using this scheme. And I say to them, if your business desperately needs liquidity now, please don't sit and wait for this scheme, because I'm not sure it's actually going to be able to save you in the short to medium term. So my advice to anyone listening to this, be it on this telecon on Facebook later, is if you know your business desperately does need money, and you're going to need money over the next 6-8 weeks to survive, please don't think that just getting through to your bank is going to mean you're able to access the money to actually be able to save your business, because it may be too late by the time, one, you get through, but secondly, by the time they've told you they can't help you and the reasons for it. You need to act quicker, you need to act now. And I'm guessing that's what the other guys in this room will talk about with regard to actually helping your cash flow. If it still needs a capital injection, having done everything that the experts tell you to do, then feel free to give me a shout or look at alternative lenders, because I don't think the bank's going to be in a position to administer the scheme.
Right, thank you, James. Can you again put your contact details in the contacts?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah.
So that everyone can get in touch if they need to.
Yeah.
Has anyone got any questions? If you want to type them into the chat at the bottom, we can ask those questions to James now or at the end. I had a question though, James. Do you think that from reading and listening to the government, though, it is their intention to get these loans out? And if you haven't got an immediate need for cash flow, they may come, or do you think it's not as good as it sounded?
I think this is the classic case where the government and the bank leaders who are there have genuinely, I'm no Tory, trust me, they generally have good intentions. And when you see big numbers thrown in your face, I mean, the figure that's been quoted in this government scheme is £330 billion, which is an enormous amount of guarantees for the government to give. And that sounds great. But the problem is, as always, with anything in banking, as I know from my experience, the gap between the guys at the top who are saying, we want to do this, we want to lend this money, and the guys on the bottom, that on the front line, the coalface, who are actually dealing with the processes and dealing with the clients, is absolutely massive. And I remember several times when I was in the bank, when policies were proposed, we said, well, we won't be able to do that. We simply can't. We don't have the infrastructure to be able to do that. The systems won't allow it. And this is, at the moment, one of those kind of situations where I do think genuinely that the intentions of the government are good. I do genuinely think that the banks want to support. Despite my career, I still have this kind of false belief in banks that they still do want to help. They'd like to, but I just don't think the systems are geared up to take it. And actually, every bank over the last 10 years has shed 30 to 40% of their staff.
Yeah.
And now they're getting influxes of small businesses wanting 5, 10, 15,000 pounds, and then they're not in a position to cope with it. I mean, even as a preferred broker, it's going to take me, at the best of times, a day to get a call back from a bank manager. So goodness knows what it's going to be like now. So I do believe, to answer your question, that the government would like the banks to offer this support, but everything takes so long by the time it gets down the chain, and because time is just absolutely so pressing at the moment with regard to this. We've never had this happen before, where the tap's just been turned off. Even with the recession 12 years ago, it was a slow release. This has just been turned off, and you can't turn an oil tank around on a sixpence, can you?
No.
So that's my concern about it.
So your sort of main takeaway advice really is then, if people need the cash sort of in the next 6 to 8 weeks, then they need to be looking at other options. Would that be the...
I'm sorry, Gemma, you faded out a bit there.
I don't know what you did there, Gem.
My
like
connection was unstable. I'm sorry. Blame Tom. Your main takeaway advice is that if it's 6 to 8 weeks that you need that cash to keep you going for that, then you need to look at some other options.
My main advice would be that if you believe that your business, you look down fundamentally, talk to your accountant, talk to your business coach, whoever it is who helps you with regard to your cash flow planning, your financial forecasting. If you plan for a worst case scenario and you identify a gap in your cash flow, that means in the next, let's say 3 months, that you wouldn't be able to trade unless you get money in, and you do identify you need some cash in your business, then do something about it. Get your head out of the sand and do something about it. I'm not saying necessarily you come to myself, whether it's, you do something. If you need money, get that money into the business. Borrow that money.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you.
Problem.
Right, Flo, shall we go to you now? Are you still there, Flo? Oh, you're on mute.
Hello.
Hi, Flo. How are you today?
Hi. Yeah.
Are you okay?
Sorry.
So
yeah, not too bad.
So, Flo, the question I'd got for you was, is there any updates on the HMRC portal to apply for the 80% of staff wages if you're going to furlough staff?
Unfortunately, there isn't any update yet on there. The online portal, they're hoping to get up and running in April, and this would be, you'll be able to backdate to the 1st of March if need be. But currently there's no update on there. They haven't managed to set it up. They're trying their best, but they have actually got to get some legislation through to allow this to happen. And also then go through all the procedures to set up this portal. And it's going to be a brand new online portal, so I'm sure there's probably going to be sort of a longer term, because you know what the revenue's like. When you set up with them, you might need to wait for a code or something like that. So I can't imagine it's going to be a quick procedure there. So what I would recommend, I mean, I know we haven't had the greatest news from James there about cash flow, but if you please do not rely on this money. If you need some additional cash to be able to pay your employees for the next few months, then do that, because I can't see that you're going to get this back anytime soon. In the next 2 months, hopefully towards the end of April, we might see that this is coming through, but currently do not rely on this as in your cash flow is what I would suggest. I know that's not the most positive of news, but people keep asking, is this ready, is this ready? And it's not ready yet, it's not set up, and I can't see that it's going to be a super quick thing to put in place. And I know you've got to see the benefit, the positives, that this will be coming to you eventually, but right now it's just not there yet, and they are trying, but and I think they've got, like James said, the best intentions, and they are trying to help people out, but it's not an easy thing to do, get this money out to everybody. So I think we just need to just be a bit patient there, unfortunately, and hopefully by the end of April we have got something there on that, and I think Andrew's going to go through the actual procedures of furloughing, and I think that's one of the other big things. But the other point I just wanted to make was to make sure that you keep any documentation of all of this, the employees, all of their details. I mean, you probably will have all of these anyway, we should have if you're running a payroll, but make sure you keep all the dates down, any communications between you and the staff, keep that down and keep it signed, details like that. But for the actual online portal with the revenue, we haven't got any information there for that yet, I'm sorry.
Okay, and I just had one question. It's a totally selfish question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because there's other people in the same position as me. I am a director on PAYE, so we're a limited company and I'm on the payroll. But technically, I'm not furloughed, am I? Because I'm doing webinars. But then I can't run my events business. So do I get 80% or not?
I missed a tiny bit of that, but I think you're saying, as a director of a company, can you put yourself on furlough? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Currently, under the, and you'll probably go through this as well, but I can't see how a director of a company can furlough themselves, because you're still going to be checking the bank, you're still going to be doing admin. I know there's loads of small businesses that are hoping, if it's one director only business or a couple of directors only, that they're hoping that they could get some help here. But I think whatever they're going to hopefully announce for self-employed and small businesses will help director only businesses. But I don't see, unless they bring in anything else or any other suggestions from the government, that how you can class yourself as a director as furloughed when there is going to be even tiny bits of admin that you're going to be doing. Now, Andrew might have a different opinion on this, but that's how I see it currently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Has anyone else got any more questions? If you put them in the comments, Tarnya, who is our HR person from Hinckley, has said that you cannot work if you are on furlough, so very hard to see how you can furlough yourself as an employee of your own limited company. So shall we we say thank you to Flo. Sorry, Gemma.
I just have one question for Flo, sorry. Before
sorry, Andrew, one question.
Sorry. So if you've got your wage bill coming at the end of this month and you're planning to do the 80%, even if you're not getting that from the government, should you pay the 80%? Is that the process now, that you would pay that 80% out and then wait to get it back in the future?
I believe that I don't, I mean, there's not really a lot of details on everything so far, but I assume, well, that's what I would assume for that. Depending on when you're starting it, I don't know if people are going to be doing it straight from the 1st of March and what the details are there, or whether they need to do it from when they started, for example, if you did it after lockdown. So I think they need to announce more details really, and I'm hoping there's all the time there's more clarity being put onto these pages on the revenue website, and they're always adding little sentences and little clarifications here and there. So hopefully every day we can look at this and get updated and make sure that we are doing this correctly.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Gemma, anything else?
Jeff as well, if you want to read that one out.
Yes, I don't know if this is more of a HR or an accountancy. I don't know. What do you think about the chances of 15% shareholder who's not a director but who's on the PAYE? Can they be furloughed even though they're a shareholder?
I'm not really sure about the answer to that one right now.
Tanya's given an answer.
Right.
So I think that was a yes. I think that's a yes.
Yeah, as long as they're on the PAYE scheme.
And you give them the proper letter.
Sorry, are they an employee and a shareholder?
Yes.
I think.
I know.
Yeah. Then it should be.
Yes.
But they've got to stop working.
Yes.
That's the key thing. Going back to Tanya's earlier point, they can't be doing any work.
Right. Okay. And Tanya agrees with Andrew, so that's
well, yeah, because I'm agreeing with her because she was right.
Oh, it's good when we know.
Yeah.
Everyone
I've got the relationship with Tarnya now. I just agree with her. It's easier.
Right, okay. Thank you so much, Flo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Andrew, shall we come to you next?
Yep.
So basically, I just wanted you to go through what the process is, because there is a proper process. I can't just say to Gemma, that's it, you're furloughed. You're done, off you go, bye.
I'm logging off, that's it.
Bye, Gemma.
You could. Can we buy Gemma new internet, though?
I think it's because we're on to Westminster as well, aren't we? Can you get off?
Yeah, my husband's working on the bill that's going through to hopefully help them with this. So he's also using Zoom. So he's draining the power at the minute.
We've got lots of things going on in the one house. I'm usually there as well, but I made a mistake. I chose to lock down in my house. I should have locked down in their house. We'll see how that would have gone. Right, okay.
Yeah.
Where did we go, Andrew?
So it's you know, as Flo's just said, it's changing all the time. And the caveat is, you know, what's said now could well have changed at the next press conference. But in theory, there's a number of things. First and foremost, you cannot. Tarnya kind of picked on the main thing from this. You cannot be an employee doing some work and be furloughed.
Right.
So furlough has been brought in. There are a lot of companies out there that don't have layoff clauses in their contracts. So there's this whole process in law about layoff and short-term working, which allows companies to lay somebody off for up to 3 months and pay them 29 quid a day. But that's kind of the maximum liability, £29 over 5 days, and that's the only payment they need to make over the 3 months. So that was the as-is position, but it was reliant on that clause being in an employment contract, and if it wasn't there, companies were then faced with it was kind of like a Sophie's Choice scenario where you were talking to your employees and saying, we don't have a contractual right to do this. And I've done this letter last night to my sister in the beauty salon. So we don't have a contractual right to do this, but your options are, we can either keep you on the books up to 3 months, pay you £29 a day for the first 5 days. That's option one. Or option two is we go through a redundancy situation. and look at headcount and all of that kind of stuff. So that's where we were. What the government have brought in is this scheme to be able, it's designed to help employers to be able to pay the staff that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to pay. So it doesn't replace the whole laying off payments or anything like that. What you have to do is turn around to your staff and actually physically furlough them. So you're writing to them and saying you are now furloughed, and there's letters and all sorts of things. But interestingly, the letter that I'm using, talking about exactly around what Flo's just said, the letter that I'm using says, just so you're aware, you'll get 80% of your salary, but this isn't coming from us. It's coming from the government. Now, you do put a line in there to the employers around, do you know what, if you can pay them now, pay it and you can claim it back. So it's either way around. But to the organisations that don't have the money available to be able to pay 80% now, the letter is saying, we're putting you on furlough, but you're going to get 80% of your salary as and when the portal launches, and it's going to come back via HMRC.
Right. Okay. Okay.
And
Thank
then
you.
every other question I've had this week has seemed to be around holiday and holiday entitlement, which continues to accrue. So that's the other thing as well, while they're furloughed, because technically they're still employed. What employers can't do is, if they've got scenarios, if they've got individuals who, so I've got a client who's popped up this week who said, we've got staff who were at risk of redundancy, can we furlough them now effectively to push the exit date back out? But they've already been through the consultation process before COVID hit and all of that kind of stuff. So it's very, very different. So you have to be very careful that furlough's being used for the reason that it was brought in.
Okay.
Can I jump in there with Andrew?
Of course.
Because I think there's a lot of people who are very confused about home working versus self-isolation versus furlough. So the principle is always you can only furlough if you would have laid them off or made them redundant. That is the basis on which you can furlough, nothing else. So if somebody's self-isolating, somebody's working at home, you're still paying them as normal, or, well, self-isolating is slightly different, but let's say they're working from home, you're paying them as normal, that's your cost as a business. The minute you furlough somebody, they can do no work, as we've both mentioned earlier. So, you know, you've got to be very clear that this is an alternative to a layoff. So you've got a company that's now shut down because, you know, they cannot operate at the moment, but you've got 3 staff members who are key employees who are still working from home to keep the business running. Those 3 employees would be on home working and not be on furlough. So you need to look at this across the business and not just assume everybody's applied equally in the same way, because it totally depends on the circumstances that are facing you. There's so much uncertainty at the moment. You know, one of the biggest questions that I'm getting, which has been on the forum, is can you hop on and off of furlough? So can you be on furlough for a week, be off for a week, be off?
Yeah, so I see.
In a company that does payroll, for 3 weeks of the month you don't need them, but for 1 week of the month you do. At the moment, I'm telling my employers to be cautious, because we don't know once you hop off whether you'll be able to claim it back again once you hop back on again.
All right.
Until we have an answer, we don't actually, there's a lot we don't know, to be fair. So, you know, I would just say to be very careful. On the chat has asked if there's a template for a letter. Well, I do have a template. I'm only allowed to use it with clients. I got my wrists severely slapped this week because I had shared it with a colleague who then shared it with their clients, who then shared it with 100 people on their distribution list. The lawyer who drafted the letter came back and said, how come Sage Green has distributed this to all these people? And it's like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. So yeah, got into a bit of trouble about that one. So although I have a template, I can only give it to my clients at this stage.
I have got a template that I've written. If anybody wants, but the caveat is it's a template. Because it's also a two-stage process, that there's the initial, do you want to be furloughed or whatever, and then there's a second letter that goes out that says, right, you are now furloughed. And I've got templates for both.
There you go, Dawn.
Thank you.
Can I just,
Thank you. That's great, Andrew. Thank you.
can I just say a quick thing as well on that? Oh, sorry. Can I just say a quick point? And I know these might sound like silly questions, but these questions have been asked. And some people have asked if they can increase their employee salaries and things like that to try and get this back. And if you're trying to do anything that you think's a little bit cheeky and you're asking it, then the answer's probably no. And there's been other sort of similar questions to that. So be sensible with this and try not to take the mickey too much, because it's just trying to help you. And there's been a ridiculous number of questions on it, whether you can add an employee that's not probably an employee and things like that. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to have been on the payroll at the 29th of February for any of this to apply as well. I might not be quite right there, but that's what I believe.
Well, that's what I believe, but when I've gone back to look at to evidence that, I think that's been taken out of the guidance. So there's a big question mark now as to whether or not it definitely was sick pay, but whether that 28th of February date still applies for furlough or not, we don't actually know, because I'm sure it's the original guidance and it's not there anymore. Faye has asked about, if you have 0 hours employees, do you furlough and why? It's a good question, and one that we still don't have the answer for. I don't know, Andrew, if you agree with me, but the logic is that if you've got a 0 hour employee, you would average their wages over the last 12 weeks worked, and that would give you the amount on which you would apply the 80% furlough. However, we don't actually know that 0 hour contract employees are eligible for furlough, because it's made clear yet.
No, it hasn't been clarified. I think the other thing is, as well, the other thing I would say is, the minute this has been announced, certainly from my experience, a lot of employees have done what employees often do and think, well, everything that's just been said applies to me. I can sit, to your point earlier, I can sit at home from now on and just get paid 8% of salary. So in terms of protecting employers, employees will try and use this to their advantage. So we've absolutely got to nail the advice that's going out to employers.
I also think the point that Flo made is that if you do any fraudulent activity, remember you're playing with HMRC. Do you really want a fraud investigation? No. I would like to say no.
No, definitely not. Right, okay. So, has anyone got any HR questions that we haven't done?
I think we've answered quite a few of the questions as they've come in, but obviously Andrew and Tarnya, if you wouldn't mind putting your email address into the chat for everyone in case they have any more questions. I know Dawn's wanted to know about templates and things, so she might need some more advice. That would be great.
And then that brings us to Jenny. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Hi, yeah, I'm good, thank you. Just trying to keep on top of all the new guidance and trying to advise everybody of the best things to do, as I'm sure my fellow panelists will agree with, really.
Yes. And so really, I just wondered if there was any, because I just wondered if there was any sort of advice, any new advice that's out there, anything that can help us really within the accounting of our businesses.
So I suppose the key thing that we've perhaps not covered is other things that can help with short-term cash flow. So I suppose one of the main things has been touched upon with furloughing employees. But on top of that, we're sort of advising clients really to defer any HMRC payments where possible. So that HMRC have said that can be deferred until next April. So that will help a lot of our clients and some of your companies. And in terms of PAYE as well, and any CIS payments, it's worth speaking to HMRC to see if you can set up payment plans or defer those where possible as well. What we are recommending though is that people keep on top of their submissions and still carry on submitting VAT and PAYE, etc. on time, but perhaps cancel the direct debit payments.
Right, so they're submitting the information.
Yeah,
but
that's it.
payments. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're suggesting that in the short term, that might be the way forward to release some much needed cash. We're also suggesting that people, this may seem obvious, but go to your bank and see what your credit options are. See if you can get an overdraft or a loan, anything like that, and check your insurance policies. See if there's any scope there to make a claim. And Companies House have announced as well that they're giving people an extra 3 months to submit their limited company accounts. So that may help in terms of filing.
That would definitely have helped in terms of our admin, wouldn't it, Gemma?
And then also, I think Rishi Sunak has announced today that for self-employed people, help is coming and that more information is going to be announced tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So, yeah,
Fantastic.
tomorrow. So just sit tight, everyone. And as well, I work for Armstrongs Accountants, and we're doing a newsletter that every time there's an update, we're sending out to all our clients. So if anyone would like to sign up for our newsletter, if you just contact me and we can add you to the mailing list. And I've had a lot of feedback from clients that it's been really sort of user friendly and sort of explains things clearly. So if anyone thinks that that would be of assistance to them, then let me know and we can get that over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Do you want to just put your contact details in the chat so that anyone can...
Yeah.
Right.
I've got a question for Jenny, please.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
So, as somebody who's new to this and about to do first year of limited company accounts,
yeah,
what does the whole moving the deadline till January mean that was announced by Rishi Sunak? Because in my head, the tax year is just about to finish and I'll submit a tax return for the entire year.
Yeah, this was for last year's tax return, self-assessment tax return. Some people had to make payments on account and they were due in July. So if you were due to make a payment on account in July, that's now been pushed back for next January.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay.
Right. Has anyone got any more questions?
I just have one for Jenny.
Yeah.
If there are some new businesses or people that haven't really looked properly at their cash flow forecasting before, are there any tips that you could give them just to help them with that in these next few months?
Yeah, it may be something that we can help with cash flow forecasts. You might need those. I don't know. Is it James? I don't know if the lenders are needing cash flow forecasts or anything like that for the loans.
Well, this comes back to the point about viability, which I mentioned earlier. So in an ideal world, and certainly as was the case with the previous scheme I mentioned, a business plan was required. And a significant part of that would be a 12-month, 3-year, whatever it was, cash flow forecast, P&L forecast.
Yeah.
The reality is, and again, this is all only starting to come out of the wash now, that I don't think the manpower is there to stress test the viability of these cash flows. Because I remember when I was a bank manager, you'd sit down with a cash flow forecast and you'd cross-reference it to the old accounts and then you do this, that and the other. Well, no one's got time for that if they want the money in the next 3 months. So I dare say there'll be an element of business planning, but I think the what I would say, to anyone who is looking for this and needs to show viability is for goodness sake, show that the business was viable beforehand and will be viable afterwards, and show that the massive impact that this particular issue has had, i.e. show that it's just decimated the income. And in all honesty, I probably shouldn't say this, cash flow forecasts, as most of us know, are our best guess at the best of times. And so as long as it shows a certain picture, it will be suitable for purpose, I would have thought, if you ask for it.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you. Right. Do any of our panelists have anything that they want to add? We're just about ready to finish now. So is anyone Flo?
I was just going to say,
Oh no,
a quick point to add to Jenny's, is that the Revenue have said that if you want to defer your VAT or self-assessment liabilities and you do pay on direct debit, make sure you cancel it at your bank, otherwise they will still take it automatically. They haven't cancelled this from their end, so you make sure you cancel it in good time, because they do it like they obviously set it up a few days before, and you do get emails. But if you don't cancel it at your end, it'll still come out, so make sure you do.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you, Flo. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? No?
Just Jenny and Jenny and Andrew, if you change on the chat, the drop down in the 2 to all panelists and attendees, and reshare your details, because Andy, you've just shared them with me, and Jenny, you've just shared them with the panelists, not with everybody else.
Thank you. Hadn't realised. Thank you.
Flo, have you shared your contact details? Yes, there they are. To all panelists and attendees, yes. Right. Has anyone in any of our attendees got any more questions? We're just about to wrap up now.
There was a question earlier up. A NatWest bank manager said all overdrafts can be up by 20%, no charges applied. That was a comment from Jay Long.
Jeff, yeah.
Well, if I can interject there, I spoke to a senior NatWest manager this morning about this particular case, and if you are good, is that a really nasty way of putting this, client of, and if you tick certain boxes, they will automatically allow a tolerance on their overdraft facilities, yes, without any penalties involved, which is great. And to be absolutely fair, they're the only bank who are doing this. So it's nice, 20%. It's better than nothing, I suppose, isn't it? It's completely unrelated to the government scheme. It's effectively a gesture of goodwill, which is rare in a bank. And I have to say, of all the banks at the moment, in my opinion, I deal with them all equally, NatWest, RBS are probably the ones who've been the most proactive, which frankly is completely, utterly confounding to everything they've done over the last 20 years. So that's really good. Obviously, whoever wrote that comment is a good customer if they've had their overdrafts increased, because it's certainly not for all customers, I can assure you that.
Okay, right. Well, I think we'll call that an end. I just wanted to, from the bottom of our hearts, Gemma, and I thank you, the panelists, so much for coming on. Jenny, thank you. Tarnya, thank you. Andrew, James, Flo, thank you so much. We appreciate it so much. You know, that the thing we're trying to do here is sort of help all of our FaBsters to get through this. And honestly, I am on such a roller coaster because I watch what's happening, and James knows I get so excited. James, we're getting loans, we're getting loans. No, we're not getting loans. Yes, we are. No, we're not. And it's
I'm the same.
Yeah, and it's the same with the 80%, you know, and it looks a bit as if it's the same with most of it, really, doesn't it? But anyway, positivity. Hopefully by this time next week things will be a bit clearer, do you think?
Yeah.
Hopefully. Do you think? I think so, yeah. Maybe we should all just end with all of us crossing our fingers at the end there. Right, okay.
And thank you so much to all the attendees that joined us as well.
Amazing. I hope you found it helpful. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye.